key question is, how can someone get more flow in their lives? How can you set up your projects or your challenges or the way you work, so that you can get into a flow state more often? And I think it's a beautiful mission. I'm very excited about trying to go on this journey with Minas and with whoever else tunes in and engages. And yeah, this first episode is kind of setting up the basis. So it's going to be a kind of, what actually is flow, like a definition of flow. What are some of the attributes to what the sensation is? And then what are some key considerations or some key criteria that you need to be mindful of if you want to set something up such that you're going to get into a flow state while you do it, be it deep work, be it sports. Those will be the main two things we talk about, deep work and sports, but you can apply this same thinking, the same mechanics to a whole bunch of places and play with it and see what works for you. Okay, let's get into it. So we decided we're going to start with a short definition, and I will read you a definition, and then Minas, I would love to just get your take on it. So flow is an optimal state of consciousness, a peak state where we feel both our best and perform our best. It is a transformation available to anyone, anywhere, provided that certain conditions are met. Minas.
Nice, nice, nice. This is the definition of Stephen Kotler, who wrote the book The Rise of Superman. And what he did was actually, he saw that the action adventure sport did impossible things, things that weren't possible like for 10 years ago. It was now like daily things like waving 40, 50 waves, surfing waves of 45, 50 feet. And this definition gives us a total perception of flow, but it's still not really accurate. And I'm gonna try to explain why. When we talk about consciousness, he's saying an optimal state of consciousness. When we think about consciousness, mostly is it sleep, waking, a little bit in stress mode or fight or flight response. So you have this spectrum of different states of consciousness. And flow sits somewhere in between, but not only in one place. Because when you're in flow, you are really calm, like this meditative state of being. At the same time, you are really alert, you're really concentrated, like you're almost on this fight or flight. So it's actually a combination of fight or flight and this calm state of mind when you just are awake and everything is clear and there's no disruption of voices. So that's why it's really difficult to capture in a word, but we're gonna try to do it with 10 components which describe flow, and then we're gonna address them and see how your take on this.
Nice. Okay, let's get into that then. What does flow actually feel like when someone is in a state of flow? Lots of people probably have gotten into a state of flow inadvertently, so they didn't intend to be, but they have stumbled into a state of flow. Let's break down what some of those things actually are, what some of those sensations are. So I have a short list in front of me. I'll go ahead and read them, and then I'd love to hear your take on that. So these are the common attributes of a flow state. It's the first one is a distorted sense of time. So you won't notice the time pass because you're not really tuned into that. The second one is a state of concentration. So you are feeling that you're focused. The third one is a loss of the feeling of self-consciousness. You don't really care about what other people think or how actually it's not necessarily true. It's more a case of like you are not really judging yourself. There's no like internal dialogue where you're conscious of yourself. You're kind of in the act of doing something in the now. A sense of control, personal control over the situation. So you do feel like you have some degree of control. You're not overwhelmed or out of control. The activity is in itself intrinsically rewarding. I think this is a key attribute, the fact that there is pleasure in doing it. And Minas has a really interesting perspective on this, which is how this is actually related to personal growth, which I want to ask you about in a moment, once we're done with the different attributes. A lack of awareness, so like you kind of zoned into whatever the task or the challenge that you're doing is, and full absorption, which I guess relates to this concentration and relates to this loss of self-consciousness, etc. And the last three are kind of the three criteria of flow. um, which are direct and immediate feedback. So the action that you're taking, it has direct and immediate feedback. Like everything you do, you get feedback for doing it. In the case of surfing, for example, where you put your foot or where you look or where you turn your shoulders to will have an impact on the experience, and you'll know whether that was the right decision or wrong decision to make. A balance between your ability level and between the challenge at hand, and those are kind of in synchronicity. So you are just slightly, your skill set is just slightly below the challenge you set yourself, so you really need to fully engage to achieve it. And the last one is you had a clear goal all the way through. Nice.
Definitely, perfectly said. Yeah, and those last three are actually what they call the conditions of flow. They has to be available in order to get into flow. The other seven, like the disordered sense of time, is like characteristics of flow. It's like what we feel when we are in flow. And more importantly, those 10 doesn't have to be present at one time. This is a distinction between microflow and macroflow. Microflow is like you have a couple of those conditions that are present, and at the same time you lost the loss of time. So for instance, when you are in deep work mode, you're writing an email, and before you know it, you're writing like a whole essay, and you didn't even notice that you had to go to the bathroom. So that's a little bit the microflow. And the macroflow, on the other hand, is when you are all those attributes are available, is in all at once. It's like, for example, you have a really important public speaking event, and it's on a TED stage. You go on a TED stage, and the feedback you receive, people give you the feedback, you feel the feeling, the goal is perfect, you have to deliver in 20 minutes this amazing speech, and all those attributes are at the same time present. This is like a whoa experience. Just that you know, not all the 10 has to be present at once. That's for the first half. The second half, what I wanted to share also, what Vinny mentioned briefly, is like when we are in flow, it's like we are growing. Why? Because the challenge skill ratio is the most important trigger of flow, the conditions of flow. It's when we are really challenged and the task at hand is like in our ability, we have our full attention in the task at hand. And we are really enjoying it because it gives us a sense of completing something. You probably notice it when you're making a puzzle or you are trying to surf or doing another sport and you achieved it. You achieved the trick. This dopamine release, this other neurochemicals that are released in the brain when you achieved it, when you make the steps, or even when you have like your to-do list and a really good to-do list with really the things that you needed to do for the day to rock the day, and you think it off, like this release of dopamine, this release of other neurochemicals provide you the sense of growth, the sense of doing something. And the beautiful thing is when you come back the next time to do it, you are even more skilled. So you can amp up the challenge and you are even more better in what you do. That's a little bit the joy what you get from growing.
Yeah, and I think that's really, for me, that's one of the most beautiful aspects of flow is the fact that at its heart it is about growing, and that's not just like in a woo kind of cosmic new age way. It's like the fact that your skill level is being met by a challenge that is forcing you to get just a little bit better in the act of doing it, is what is making you grow, and that's very beautiful. So yeah, so there you have it. The first 7 were sensations and kind of like attributes to it, and the last 3 were conditions of flow, and that will be in any flow experience. You need to have those things, and the good thing about knowing those things is you can then be aware as to whether you have set the task up in such a way that you are aware of what is the clear goal here. Is this at a level at which I am going to be challenged? Am I pushing myself with that goal? Is it kind of, am I making it too easy for myself, or am I really like getting to my edge? And then being aware of like, what does feedback look like within this task? Yeah. Minas, why don't you break it down? I think in sports, it's so easy to understand. Why don't you give an example of how you might apply that to writing, because you're a writer. Minas is a published author, by the way. We should mention that. He's written how many books now?
3. Yeah.
Yeah, we should we'll share
Yeah.
those links as part of these videos. But yeah, in the act of writing, kind of break down how those 3 different components would kind of come together.
Yeah, definitely. Why we are combining sports and deep work is actually because in sports it's really easy to get in flow, because it's easy to have the clear goal. So while in surfing or mountain biking, the goal is simple. You want to catch the wave. What do you have to do? It's simple. Where do you have to focus on? It's all like everything is clear what you have to do. And the thing is about flow, what we maybe didn't mention, flow is all about being in the now. How more you are in the now, how more present you are, how more you are able to do the thing what you are doing. And it also feels really good because you're total present, like we described, like you're not having this chattering voice in your head. You're not thinking about your to-do list, what you have to do today, or that you're hungry. You're just completely in the now. And in sports, it's really easy to create this circumstance because when you're in the sea, it's like you're seeing so beautiful things in nature. It's automatic to be in the now. For example, if you have this immediate feedback, what we see as a condition of flow. Also, with surfing, you don't have to think about immediate feedback. You just get the immediate feedback because when you place your foot on the back on the plank for surfing, for example, you slow down. So it gives you immediate feedback. You go a little bit front and then you go good. But in deep work is different. We often go unprepared into deep work modus, just sitting and thinking about, okay, I'm gonna work a little bit on something, and it's not really clear. So that brings us to the first flow condition, is like clear goals. When we're talking about goals, most people think about like, I want to write a good book. This a goal, but it's not gonna get you in flow because it's not clear enough. But when you say to yourself, okay, I'm gonna write between 8 and 10, 500 words, that's a clear goal. You know what to do, you know where to focus on. I'm writing 500 words. Even more clear would be, I'm gonna write between 8 and 10, 500 words, and I would do it in a way that the reader is really excited to read this. It's even more clear goal. So how clearer the goal it is, how better. Not for the purpose of setting goals. It's really nice goals, but we're not gonna talk about this subject. But it's really easy to lose our focus when the goal is not clear.
Can I just stop you for a second? I think that is
Yeah.
such a key part. Like if people could get one thing right, it would be to be really clear about what is the goal of the task at hand. When it's, I mean, like you said, in sports, it's super simple, right? In tennis, I know that the ball comes to me, I need to hit the ball back over the net. I immediately know whether that was successful or not. Was it within the grid? It's intuitive. When it comes to work, we're just far less clear about the rules of engagement, of successful engagement versus sports. And so even what you just said there, like sitting down and being like, between 8 a.m. and 10 a.m., that's what you meant, right? 8 to 10. It was 8. Yeah. Between 8 a.m. and 10 a.m. I want to produce 500 words of written material, and I want it to feel exciting. You could even get a little bit deeper on what is exciting. But what I think is important here that people understand is that what you are doing there is you are focusing your mind. Yeah. Because your mind now has a clear target. And when your mind has a clear target, it is incredibly good at zooming in on that target. When your mind doesn't have a clear target and is still making decisions about what does good look like and how, it begins to fragment, and you imagine it's just getting more and more loose, and actually it's not as good at doing that. So setting up that clear goal in the beginning brings you into like a state where you're actually able to focus. Like even as I'm speaking, I feel my mind like coming into the center as I'm thinking about focusing on a single clear thing. So incredibly important. Yeah, as you can see by my emphasizing of the point.
Yeah. That's a really good thing, and brings me up to also another important element. Before we're gonna discuss the two other conditions, is the immediate feedback. We're gonna discuss a little bit of what is happening in flow. Because when we are thinking, it's our conscious mind at work. It's like the prefrontal cortex, what is highly developed in human beings. It's like thinking. It's really thinking about what we should do next. And the crazy thing is while the prefrontal cortex we are dependent for to critical thinking, to problem solving, etc., that's not the only way how we can do things. Our unconscious mind is also a really powerful tool. And in flow, actually, our prefrontal cortex doesn't do any much. It's just putting aside, and the unconscious mind is doing the things. So that's why the challenge skill ratio, you have to be skilled in what you do in order to be able to let it go, to make the shift from the conscious to the unconscious mind. You don't want to think about it. It's the most easiest example I can provide you is like when you are tennising and when the ball is coming with like 60 miles per hour and you have to hit the ball. You do it forehand, you do it backhand, you don't think about it, you just do it. And that's exactly what we want to create when we are in deep work. We want to be prepared well enough to know where we're to focus on, to know how we get immediate feedback, to know where our challenge skill ratio is in order to be fluid, in order to let go from our conscious mind to our unconscious mind. And this is a process. It's not going direct. So for example, when I'm in the first 10 minutes of my deep work, it's just my conscious mind doing the thinking. Oh, am I doing it right? Am I doing it? Do I have to do something different, or is this sentence good? This is all me in like the pre-stage of flow. But when I'm in flow, there's no thought. It's just doing. That's it.
Beautiful. It's beautiful. Yeah. And this is all part of that wider conversation about knowing how to work with your mind. Another thing that you mentioned, for example, in previous conversations, was the importance of preparing the mind to go into flow. And I know that one of the things you do is actually you set it up the night before. So why don't you tell people a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. Because when we are sitting down, we want to create meaningful output. You don't want to think about it. You just want to flow. When you're in flow, your creativity goes high. Your decision-making ability is going high. Your problem-solving ability is going high. So we want to get as soon as possible in flow and don't waste any of our willpower on thinking or deciding what we are gonna do next. So the best way to do this is the evening before. So when I want to get in flow in the next day with writing, I just visit my book. I think about, okay, which chapter I'm gonna write for tomorrow, and then tackle some problems. I write them down, and then I leave it. I don't get myself into the place that I'm gonna work. I go, no. My evening is for recovery. Recovery is a really important point, what we're gonna cover in the second episode of our flow episodes. So we want to have this prepared mind when we are going to sit down the next day. And you don't have to be like really strict on it in the evening, or just have a moment that you can prepare for yourself. And even you don't have to have the deep work in the evening, in the morning. You can do it in the afternoon. You can do it in the evening, just to have being prepared what you want to work on. It's really important key for getting into flow.
Yeah, and I think the thing to emphasize there again is so what it sounds like you're doing in this is you are clearing the space within your mind so that when you enter the flow state, you're not thinking about, well, you're not thinking, but to kind of just break it down, you're not thinking about what do I need to do right now. Those kind of decisions were already made. You're just sitting down and you're in the act of doing, right? And that's key,
Yeah.
is that you need, to enter a flow state, you have to be, all of your processing mentally has to be about the action of doing that task. Like everything else was taken care of, if you can, last night, because what that means is you're lodging it into your subconscious. So your subconscious already knows what is the goal, what does feedback look like in the goal, what are some of the problems that you might face that you need to navigate through it. And you did all that homework last night so that when you get up and when you're doing it, or the next day when you do it, you're just ready to flow. Really, really key. If you sit down at the beginning of the session, you're like, okay, so what is my goal here? You're already setting yourself up to not be as successful, because you're now having to, you know, consciously with your prefrontal cortex decide, make new decisions, you know, where you should just be in the act of doing. Super important. Okay, and I guess that brings me on to one thing that we briefly mentioned before but didn't really touch on, which was what is actually happening inside the brain. Like, give it to me on like a wave level. Like, why is flow such a powerful state, and like why does it produce those sensations and produce those great productivity results? Like, what's actually happening in the brain?
Yeah, that's a nice way to look at it. We can think about flow, what we briefly touch about it is when we have this brain waves, this states of consciousness. When we are in sleep, it's like going like low waves. But in flow, it's also really focused attention. And those are the really high waves. We call them, the low waves, we call them theta, and the high waves, we can even call them gamma. That's really spikes and high waves. And in flow, because we always doing something what's really challenging us, that's why the challenge skill ratio is so important. We are truly focused on the task at hand. But at the same time, it's not like a stressful way. It's not like, okay, I have to deliver today, so I have a deadline and I need to work, or there's a lot of tension. No, in flow, it's like going fluid. It's like being super chill. You don't even notice that you are doing something what's actually really hard because it's above your challenge skill ratio. But it's really nice, like you're meditating. It's like everything is clear, you feel really present. So it's a combination between those brain waves. And in the process also, there are a lot of neurochemical release going on in the brain, and especially in different phases in flow. We're gonna discuss this in the second episode. But those neurochemicals provide us actually more attention. So, like for dopamine, it creates this excitement. It creates this being involved. It creates this being even more in the now. And such those neurochemicals, when they combine, it creates more and more experience when you're like doing something that feels so good. And I'm sure that everybody have experienced this. So you would definitely recognize, maybe it was in cooking, or when you had a conversation, or you had a deadline where you could was really present and really calm. This sensation, that is what our purpose is that you can create it more often in your day-to-day life. So it's not a guarantee that you will have it every day, but we make the chances bigger because we give you like a skill set. You can use it throughout your life, and it creates the possibility to get in flow more often.
It's when you were speaking, one of the things I found interesting was that another thing that might be useful to touch on is that you have to believe you're going to succeed. There's a chance you're going to succeed in this flow state, you know. And this does come back to the challenge skill ratio, in that like you have to believe that you do have sufficient skill to overcome this challenge. You might not. You might still fall off the surfboard. You might still whack a tennis ball too far out. You might sit down to write, and you know you write 450 instead of 500 words, or that, you know, a part of it needs to be rewritten, and it's not. You know, it's now 10:30. Like, you might still fail. You might stumble over your words on the stage when you're speaking to this audience, but you have to also believe that there's a chance you're going to absolutely smash it. You're going to get that wave. You're going to knock that ball. You're going to wow that crowd. You're going to write that amazing piece of work. And I don't know why. I think it just resonated with me, this realization that actually, you know, self-belief in flow is it's not a, you know, it's not a criteria. It's not a component. It's not a condition. But it's important to believe that you have, you know, you could produce this amazing result. That was a small point I wanted to make. You know, that sense
It's
within yourself that like, I can do this, like the mental narrative, the mental language of your conversation with yourself needs to be, well, when you're in flow, you should have no mental narrative. But like prior to it, when you're setting it up, you should be like, you know, I can do this. Okay, here we go. I'm going to give this a good shot, and I think it's going to go well. Yeah.
to even more go, it's a really important point. I wrote it down for us for the next episode also, because this is not this belief. I can even make it more specific. You don't have to believe that you can do it. You have to believe that the energy you put in, the effort you take in doing the thing you want to accelerate in or what you love to do, it's providing you better skills. And this is called like the growth mindset. And the growth mindset, I'm sure that you probably heard this before, the fixed mindset versus the growth mindset, where we definitely go deeper in the next episode. But this growth mindset is essentially is like I'm practicing and I'm getting better because of the practicing. And the fixed mindset is like I'm doing it and I'm not doing well, so I am not good. So I'm stop trying it. So there's a big difference, and maybe it's not clear enough, and definitely we're gonna tune up in this way more in the next episode because it's really important aspect. Like you have to believe in your ability that when you put this time in it, the energy, and to really try to master a skill, you are getting better. And
Mm.
not because of talent. Talent plays a really small aspect. It's maybe in motivation, but it doesn't play a role in really achieving the skill set which you are after.
You have to believe in your ability to grow. That's really,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah. And believe that you are growing through the act of doing. That is,
yeah,
that's very beautiful. And also it's true. It's, you know, it's like it's true, but it's like, it's a truth to be conscious of. Like by being conscious of that truth and holding it within your mind, I think you will unlock a certain amount of additional focus or conviction in the idea. Um, okay, so that's a really important thing to digest as well. And then I want to I forgot to mention this when you went through it, but I just love the dual wave concept. Like the fact that within the mind, when you're in a flow state, that just points to how special this mindset is and why it's so worth striving for. Because when you're in that place, your mind is both meditating at the same time as solving a complex challenge at this, like, and that's like really, really beautiful. Like I just, yeah, I dig it.
yeah. Yeah, it is
Okay.
beautiful and gives us a good recognition of where we are. If we feel stressed, it gives a good recognition like, hey, I'm stressed, I'm not in flow, so maybe I should do this. And what that this is, we're gonna talk in episode 2, and we also gonna talk more deeper into the conditions of flow because we didn't go deep on immediate feedback, we didn't go deep on the challenge skill ratio, and we probably gonna discuss it more deeper so you can apply it more easier in your deep work or maybe in sports, and you can play with it. And we're gonna next time also we're gonna talk about the flow cycle because a little bit of misconception of flow is that you get in flow and that's it. But actually, the flow cycle is a 4-stage cycle where we have to begin with struggle, where we have to be able to release the struggle, where we get in flow, and where we recover from flow. This cycle is so important because it gives us the ability again to be more and more in flow without getting burned out because flow state it's really an expensive state but we don't feel it in the moment. But we can definitely touch on it next time.
Cool. Thank you. Okay, let's wrap up there. So in summary, I was Vinay. I am Vinay still. This is Minas. This first episode is part of a series of conversations about flow, about getting into a flow state, about understanding what that experience is, what's happening in the brain, what are the conditions of flow, which is the stuff that we talk about today, and then some more things like the importance of preparation, like which anyway, a bunch of stuff. And next time we're going to be speaking about the flow cycle, which Minas just spoke about now. Cool. That was it. Minas, thank you very much. I'm really looking forward to chatting with you again next week. And yeah, I hope this was informative, people. Leave us a comment, engage with us, let us know what you want to know more about, less about. This is being made to share the love and share the knowledge. So help us do that better.
Yeah, thank you, Vinny, and the watchers. Thank you for your time. Again, like Vinny said, feel free to ask questions and to be critic about everything what you hear and try it out and ask us for more inputs and hope you have an amazing flowy day.
Thank you, man. Ciao.
Thank you. Bye bye.